Welcome back, writers. Today we're going to be talking about creative nonfiction as a narrative. A narrative, of course, is a story. And, we're used to telling stories, especially from our fiction. But now remember, I told you last time we learned from the examples of James Fry and the trouble you can get in by claiming that fiction is actually nonfiction? Yeah, don't do that. However, our memories are malleable. So how do we fictionalize our writing without turning it into fiction? Well, the good news is it's probably easier than you might think. Essayists recreate things rather than making them up. Like I said, our memories are malleable. Okay, we've already got the material in there in our heads. The way we craft it, shape it, recall it, even, is oftentimes more entertaining than it actually happened. It's our duty, our goal in creative nonfiction to tell true stories in an entertaining way. So, how do we do that? Well, the material's already there. It's our job to make it exciting. So often, according to Philip Lopate, so often the plot of a personal essay is its drama, its suspense consists in watching how far the essayist can drop past her psychic defenses towards deeper levels of honesty. Now, what happens here is we don't have the context of things when they happened. We don't have the lesson as they're going on, or the poignancy of it. That comes a little bit later. But in the retelling, we have all that in front of us, right? Um, it can be a story about how you, well, my story about how I learned about gravity, or a story about the time that someone helped you out, a stranger assisted you, and what that taught you about the world, or about the goodness or the basic goodness of people, right? Now, you don't understand it, you don't realize all the implications while it's happening, but at the other side, you do. All right. So we just take what's there and make it better. We look for the truth underlying it. All right, so let's talk about character. Creative nonfiction writers treasure character development almost as much as writers do. Usually, the most developed character is the writer, him or herself. And in a later lecture, we're going to talk about writing yourself into the essay. But for now, let's focus on characters. If the essay focuses on other people or a particular subject, the essayist may hardly mention himself at all, so that other than the authorial voice, he's almost absent completely from the essay, and that's okay. When you're on stage in your essay, though, as a character, you may act very differently than the person whose voice is relating the events of your life, right? Because there's you, the narrator, and then there's you, the person in the action of the story. All right, and you, the narrator, can know things that the character in the story doesn't know. So the character has to act as the character, even if he's you, right? But the narrator will always be the narrator. The narrator will always know and have this sort of omniscient voice, or well, at least this limited, or perhaps maybe limited omniscient voice, because you know how the story turns out, but the character that is you in the story does not. Okay. Um, the you represented in the essay will not be identical to the voice narrating the essay. Your readers will recognize this as a convention of writing, and they'll forgive you. Right? They understand that this is all part of how we make the donuts, so to speak. So don't worry about you not sounding like the you are today. Right? Through the use of intimate detail, according to Lee Gutkind, we can hear and see how people about whom we are writing say what is on their minds. We may note more about the inflections in their voices, their elaborate hand movements, and their other eccentricities. Yeah? Detail, like every story, detail is king. A writer of a short essay, as a writer of a short essay, you're always searching for these little unique details that will distinguish your characters from other people. If, like, for example, if I were writing about my grandmother, we called her Mama. All right, that's a detail. And she had this great sort of habit of uttering malapropisms. Right? I asked her one time, I said, how you doing, Mama? She said, fine as a frog's hair. All right, that's a detail there. That's colorful, and it tells you just about all you need to know about my mama, at least about her southernisms and her particular way of speaking. She never heard of a hurricane, but she was afraid of hurricanes. Harrikins. Yeah. And being unusual, these little unusual details, these quirky things that we mentioned, these are what makes us human. Supply and fertilize your writing with these details about your characters, right? Uh, Same coin, different side. My grandfather, when I was I was about 19 or 20, I was home visiting from college, and we were at church, and my granddad says, "You sparking any?" Sparking. And now I was raised in the South, but that one even kind of eluded me a little bit. And I looked at my mom, and she goes, "He means courting." I was like, "Oh, courting, okay." Then suddenly understood the Joni Mitchell album "Court and Spark." Neither here nor there. But all right, so that is a very unique, very Southernism of my grandfather. Unique detail about him, right? Now my granddad spent most of his life working outside. He was a farmer from the time he was knee high to a grasshopper, and he had this sort of permanent dark tan, and his eyes were kind of triangle shaped from squinting, walking behind the plow, sowing in the field, or going out to tend his cows. And on the back of his neck was almost like a checkerboard pattern, from the wrinkles there. And I remember that very vividly about him. So if I were going to write about my grandfather, and I have in the past, I would include these details: the triangle-shaped eyes, kind of like Wyatt Earp from the movie Tombstone. Kurt Russell, you notice he and his brothers all had these triangle-shaped eyes from staring down at their opponents in the sun, right? So unique details, unique little idiosyncrasies. These are what make good writing, and they're also what makes us human. It'll make your essay sing to your readers. Now, let's talk about some dialogue here. Dialogue, it varies. Kim Stafford believes that writers should be professional eavesdroppers. If you're sitting around in a crowd somewhere, if you have a chance and you can do so without being noticed, write down the unique flow and speech patterns of your fellow citizens, the people sitting around there near you. You'll learn to listen for those odd idiosyncrasies, those quirks of the language that people use. And these, of course, will also make these people unique and make your stories unique. He holds that he writes down snippets of conversation, then holds them and holds them until he can find a proper place for them. Now, me myself, in my notebook, I usually have a page or two or a file marked spare parts. Okay, and the spare parts file are for things that are ideas that I come up with, or little snippets of dialogue that I don't have a place for now, but I can slip in later. Keep that in mind. Either open up a file on your computer or a memo on your smartphone or what have you, and work with that. By listening to the glories of conversation, Kim says, I'm moved to write. And there is a certain beauty and music to language, and it's unique to every person. All right, dialogue in creative nonfiction stands out. However, it doesn't need to be dialogue heavy. Just a few words and a direct quote can transport the reader from a distant perspective to the immediacy of the present, like the McClanahan Life Rower essay. Right? She transports us from the past, some memory that she's working on, to the very present when she goes back to the rowing, when she pulled the rope, and the little woman in the screen, or the little person in the screen, pulls ahead in the boat, and that kind of thing. Okay? Editor Daniel Miniker says, anytime that you're reading about an important incident and you start introducing dialogue and scenes that are virtually impossible to know, you've got a problem, right? If you as the writer can't know them, if you are introducing things that are completely unknowable, either because they're unwitnessable or improbable, yeah, you're in trouble. Cut that stuff out. If you cannot possibly remember verbatim dialogue from conversations that you had decades ago, but you reproduce it just as is, your reader's going to be real suspicious. All right, but there's a way around this. What we have available to us, a shrewd writer will include the essence of speech without relying on a direct quote. All right, and what they do is apply a paraphrase. You put the words in your own voice. You put the the conversation in your own words, because it's hard to remember something that long, particularly the absolute and particular speech patterns and the very words that people say. Or you can summarize. That's where you condense speech into a few succinct sentences and words, so your reader gets the gist of it, the essence and the spirit, without having to reproduce the whole thing. Now let's talk about setting scenes. We have to know right away where we are, who's involved, and what's at stake. Right? That is the essence of our story. Otherwise, we're going to lose our reader. They're going to become confused. You want to know who the key players is, where the action is taking place, and what the conflict is. Remember with Freytag's pyramid way back at the beginning? No conflict, no story. It's not even an anecdote if you don't really have some sort of dramatic tension or some conflict here. Scenes and essays can be as short as a paragraph or even a sentence. Right? Take, for example, the David Sedaris essay. Summed up in a very few sentences, you get the idea that it takes place in a schoolroom. He doesn't go into an expansive discussion of it, but he adds just enough detail that that you understand what's going on. Or the McClanahan essay, when she talks about seeing the sonogram of her soon-to-be niece. Right, with just a few details, your mind fills in the rest. You get it's a hospital room. There's a tech there, and nurses, and who all. You fill in the cast of characters based on what little she actually tells you. If your scenes have little to no dialogue, you may feel more confident about the accuracy of your description. And that's fine too. You don't have to fill that in. Although creative writing instructors preach imagery and specificity, all narrative relies in part on summary. Okay. We're not going to remember everything specifically, and you shouldn't even try to, because it's going to make you tempted to make stuff up. And, for creative nonfiction, that's not the way to go. Almost all writing almost all writing is fiction in the sense that we shape our experience to suit the needs of what we believe to be a truth greater than chronology or biography, according to David Rumptvedt. And that's true. It's all fiction because, like I said, we can't remember everything, so we recreate it. We fill in the blanks. And like I told my friend, this is the retelling, so it's better than the way it actually happened. And so the moment we sit down to tell a story, even a true story, it becomes a story, our version of the truth. We can only tell what we remember. And so a literary approach to your story or essay will embrace the possibility and shy away from certainty. All right, so let's go over our checklist. Are your characters believable? Caricatures don't work any better in nonfiction than in fiction. Be sure to show people, to show both the good and bad sides of the people you're talking about, the noble and the less than noble. If your essay contains dialogue, is it short, vivid, and believable? Use dialogue for recent events. If they're older events, use summary and paraphrase. A little bit, that'll take you a long way. And finally, are your settings for your nonfiction vividly rendered? Keep your scenes dynamic and your pacing lively by using concrete and specific details whenever possible. I want to know the who, the what, the where, the when, the why. I want to know the sounds. I want to know the smells, if appropriate. Everything that will paint a picture for me. Remember, the number one rule, and I can't emphasize this enough, that's why I've been emphasizing it all semester. Show it, don't tell it. All right? All right. So, next video we're going to be talking about the poetry of creative nonfiction. Hope these are helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next video.